Fear is universal. We've all wondered at one point what might be lurking in the dark around us. Felt our hearts beat a little bit faster when something doesn't seem right. Gone into fight or flight in a Waffle House because a guy walks in and he looks kind of shifty. And so when he orders a cheeseburger, you think it's code for he wants to kill you. And so you sit with your back against the wall and prepare evasive maneuvers while making peace with your God before you meet him. The point is, we all get what it's like to be scared. And it's generally the things that we're scared of that we're also curious about. In horror media, like books, movies, and games can be a way for people to explore that without getting in any actual danger. All my life, I've loved horror games. Something about running away from the beast, heart racing, sweating hard, butthole puckered. It's exciting. But horror's tough. I mean, it's harder than you'd think to capture what makes something scary. And even harder to translate that into a video game. Ugh. So for every amazing horror game out there, there's like 10 Backrooms games. I'm so tired of the Backrooms. So what is it that even makes a game scary in the first place? Well, let's really cut into that and talk about exactly what makes for a good what the hell? Nasty. Horror is pretty subjective, right? Some things scare the crap out of people that just don't really faze others. For example, like religious horror would probably scare the more spiritual folks. And then there's classic analog horror, which is made solely for kids who had CRTs growing up and would just like hover their hand over the screen to feel the static. And then there's the mascot horror that gets all the middle schoolers jumping. Oh God, I hope Freddy Fazbear asks me to the spring formal. While some games will try for those specific kinds of scares, most horror games are going to shoot for those innate primal fears. And one of the big ones is isolation. Alone. Isolation on its own is already not fun, but now imagine it with alien isolation. Boom. In this case, isolation doesn't necessarily mean alone, because there are people on the ship. They're just not your people. The first guy you meet after everything goes down is pretty cool, but he's really only there to tell you that there's an alien on the ship killing people, and that everyone else on the ship is killing people. But hey, good thing you got each other, right? Excellent. Isolation plays such a huge role in creating an unsettling environment, which is why multiplayer horror games are almost impossible to actually make scary. There's been some decent attempts though, like the Outlast Trials is okay. And then there's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is really fun, but not scary in any way. And Dead by Daylight is the worst offender by so far. That game is just tag, but exclusively for people who work at gas stations. Isolation is enough to get anybody quaking in their boots. But even scarier than being alone is when you do find people and some wrong, some strange, something uncanny.
Rearrange your face a little bit every time someone looks at you, so the more they look at you, the crazier they feel. Uncanny. What the fuck?
By uncanny, I mean taking things that are familiar and warping them to be out of the ordinary in an unsettling way. Resident Evil 7 utilizes the uncanny perfectly when you show up at this house looking for your wife Mia. Stop in the kitchen for a quick snack. Looking good. And then you find your wife Mia. Except she's kind of crazy. She's got these moments of clarity where she's acting scared and like she loves you, and then wham, she Kool-Aid mans through the wall and cuts your hand off. That's all right though. Just throw some staples in that thing and keep trucking, because you got the whole Baker family to meet. These are the antagonists of the game, just some screwed up family out in the middle of butt cheek nowhere. They've all got that uncanny, almost human vibe that'll really give a guy the goosies. Resident Evil 7 is actually one of my favorite horror games. I think I just really like that hillbilly in the woods trope. It always freaks me out. Hillbillies actually scare the shit out of me. What are you hiding in those overalls, goddammit? In Little Nightmares, you're just a little guy exploring a big ship. I imagine this game is like a carnival cruise, but from the perspective of a rat. Throughout the game, you see these freaky distortions of what seem like people, but they're just so big and gross and shoveling food into their mouths. This is either an exaggerated portrayal of gluttony really meant to make you think, or someone went to Golden Corral and got really inspired. Taking things you're familiar with and twisting them, whether it be people or the world around you or 44th President Barack Obama, it's always gonna be freaky. Doki Doki Literature Club looks like your average dating sim visual novel, but there was something interesting about this one specifically. Right there, just a teensy weensy itty bitty little psychological horror tag. I mean, this game doesn't look like psychological horror, but the longer you play it, the more you realize something is very wrong. It's subtle at first. Characters take little jabs at each other, they start to hint at some underlying trouble, and it all builds up to a point where this cute little game subverts every possible expectation you could have for it and turns into a horrible nightmare. I can't even show you what happens in the game without getting flagged. It's that bad. Predictability is the death of horror, and so many games fall victim to doing the same scares over and over and over again. Layers of Fear is a horror game that loves to do this one particular kind of scare where you're walking down a hallway, creeping through a mansion, you open a door, you start walking, you turn around, and oh man, I'm in a different hallway. What the fuck is going on right now? Out of all of them though, Five Nights at Freddy's is the absolute worst about it because the game relies entirely on jumping. I will admit the first 15 minutes or so of this game were super scary, but everything after that was just annoying and making me increasingly mad. I don't know how Markiplier is not on blood pressure medication. I just get so tired of the stupid duck every single time. What are you looking at? Huh? Do you want me? Sexually? Because I can be convinced. Jump scares aren't even a scare, in my opinion. They're just sensory overload and mostly annoying. I do think they can be done well when used sparingly and when a sense of dread has been built up properly. Like, for example, Dead Space does them amazingly. They all feel earned because you know these creatures are here on the ship, and when they jump out at you, it's not a cheap freak out, it actually leads to a confrontation. More often than not, though, jump scares are just thrown around when people can't find a way to build real tension. And while Five Nights at Freddy's is very guilty of that, it does get one thing right, though, and that is powerlessness. Oh, man. In Five Nights at Freddy's, you're stuck in this office with only 2 buttons to open and close doors and some cameras to keep these disgusting, freaky, sexy, just awful, hot creatures at bay. As the primitive beasts that we are, we fear being hunted. It's programmed into us. And in a scenario where you're powerless, you might as well be just another deer walking by in Big Buck Hunter Arcade. Go on down to your local arcade right now and play Big Buck Hunter Arcade. Outlast is like the Disney ride of horror games. It's like if you were on A Small World and all the little dolls started to come to life and were trying to eat you. Actually, that sounds a lot scarier. So pretty much in Outlast, you're stuck in a hospital type place that you can't get out of. And all you've got on you is this night vision camera to help you navigate through the horrors. All the scares in this game are super obvious, but that doesn't mean they're not scary. I mean, you know this wheelchair guy is gonna jump out at you. But you know, even knowing that, still freaky. There's no way to attack in this game, so your only option is to run. And those moments where you're sprinting away from some disgusting creature that's just inches away from grabbing you could be super tense. It's a primal fear programmed into all of us, and both Outlast 1 and 2 use it pretty goddamn well. The next 2 points I wanted to make were about using the unknown to turn your imagination against you and the use of violence to deeply disturb you. These 2 things are present in a lot of games, but I figure the best way to portray them to you is to tell you about my first horror game experience. And there I was, just a frumpy little 8-year-old sitting at the school lunch table enjoying my square pizza when my friend came down and sat next to me. We were talking about video games as you would expect, and for some reason he had a game on him and he said, "Here, I'll let you borrow it." So I took it home. I sat down crisscross applesauce at my PS2 and plugged that puppy in. And it was at this point that the square pizza I had for lunch exited my body expeditiously. Even just the weird scratch mark transition things were traumatizing for me. I'm pretty sure right in this moment, I hit puberty and my nuts dropped down just so that I could retreat right back up into my body out of sheer terror. Manhunt 2 was an incredibly controversial game and was banned in multiple countries and censored in several different ways. But little 8-year-old me did not know that. Never heard of this thing. I've played some violent video games before, okay? I was not monitored as a child, but this was something different. So that's the violence there, completely covered. They got it all. On top of that, throughout the game, you are playing an extremely unstable person. and everything he sees, you are not sure that it's real, so it really makes you question everything that's going on around you. It messes with your mind. Because I just got this game from a friend and had never heard about it before, it felt like found footage to me, which made it 100 times scarier. I'm pretty sure that's how people who played PT felt. I didn't get to play the game. I didn't have a chance because it got delisted before I could, but I'm pretty sure it was just kind of thrown up onto the PlayStation Store randomly one day. There's a lot of games that use both violence and the unknown much better than Manhunt 2. As an adult, I can see this game probably isn't even that scary, but for the longest time, this was the scariest game I had ever encountered and thoroughly freaked my little bean. An example of a game that uses them better? Amnesia the Bunker. That is a messed up game, man. Every single mechanic in that game makes you question, is the monster gonna find me if I do this? How am I gonna get out of here alive? Who the hell would make a flashlight that you have to turn and pull really hard and really loudly just to use for a couple of seconds? Everything you do in this game comes with the risk of alerting the creature that lurks in the walls to your presence. Every sound, every step is stressful. I need a Marlboro Red instantly. All of these elements can come together to make an amazing horror game, but none of them matter without one specific thing: immersion. What? I said no. You said what is jelking?
No, just don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Don't look it up.
What are you talking about? Jelking. Oh, what the? Fear is just a response to perceived danger. And if you're not immersed in a game, your brain's not going to register anything going on as danger. These claustrophobic corridors from Dead Space splattered with the blood of people who you could end up just like. Or the storyline of Soma that slowly reveals itself over the course of the game. Or every single music track and sound effect in Silent Hill 2 that play leading up to the game's most famous location. Without these core pillars of the experience, there's no horror trope in the world that could get you frazzled up. There are so many great games out there that do a fantastic job of pulling you in through the use of music, sound design, atmosphere, but they're all working at a disadvantage, at least most of them. How is any horror game supposed to get you to shit your pants when you're just watching through a screen while loafing it up on the couch? Well, that's where VR horror comes in and shits your pants for you. Resident Evil 8, the game that was pretty underwhelming for me when I played it on my computer, had me physically running away, ripping cords out of the wall when I played it in VR. The game doesn't even need to have a good atmosphere to suck you in, because the game is literally stuck to your face. Even Five Nights at Freddy's, one of the most unserious, annoying games I've ever played, is terrifying in VR. She is so big from this perspective, I am feeling a lot of emotions right now. I'm getting way too worked up. LaCroix break. Oh, there are so many different things that you could point to and say, that's what makes a horror game scary. When really, it's a mix of all these things. Isolation, the uncanny, subversion of expectations, powerlessness, violence, the unknown, and immersion. Only when you bring these things together and create from a place of vulnerability, using your own fear in the games, can you create a truly terrifying experience. Around me are a few of the games that I think really use these elements well. If you're looking for a horror game, check out one of these. Leave your favorite horror game down here in the comments so that we can all find some new ones. And after you do that, click this card right here to watch another one of my videos. I love doing this. I'm not gonna stop anytime soon. Thank you so much for 85K. It is crazy how much we have grown in such a little time. Words can't say how much I appreciate it. But yeah, click that card. Thank you. Goodbye.